Wow, this is so exciting. I've never had people in bleachers for a talk of mine before. As Alan mentioned, pardon me, I'm Susan Dray. I have been in this field since the beginning, and I'm also the original Dr. Dray. Just hold on to that thought. I want to talk with you a little bit about what we as a human-centered design community, loosely constructed, what we do, and who we are, what makes us good at what we do. So I have to start by saying thank you to Gary Marsden, who very sadly passed away 5 years ago, some number of years ago. Gary was an Irishman who went to South Africa to work with people. And this was pretty advanced when he went down there. I remember meeting him in 2001. In fact, it was 2 days after 9/11. And so he talked with me for a long time about his goal and my goal, which were to try to help people who haven't been included, people at the, quote, margins, how to include people in this organization, in the profession, so that we can learn and so that they can learn. So it's a two-way thing. So I'd like to thank Gary, look down on us, and so. Okay, so you guys know that human-centered design / user-centered design / co-design / participatory design / engineering, you get it. We are loosely tied together and tightly tied together at the same time. We're obviously a worldwide profession, but there are huge differences when you stop and talk to people in different parts of the world. There are enormous differences as well. So, for instance, specific tools, specific methods, specific courses. These are all things which vary, many other things as well. But at our core, I think that as a profession, we do these things. So I'm going to talk with you about what we do, in my opinion. I'm going to give you some thoughts about who we are. And I'm going to talk about stories from the interstices. That is my favorite word. I had to use it. So interstices are those little spaces between light, where light gets through between leaves, where there's fluid between cells in the body. It's very small, but it's absolutely vital. And I think, whoops, what happened? I think that we sit in those interstices because we understand or want to understand, quote, users, bad word, but the people who are going to use whatever it is, and the people who are designing whatever it is. And sometimes that's us. Sometimes we're both of those things. What was I going to say? Oh, I want to just say one thing about users as a term. There are two words that I find unbelievably horrible, but I haven't been able to come up with good alternatives. The first is users. As far as I know, there are only two professions who talk about users, HCI and drug dealers. So, I think we maybe want to think about and that inevitably influences us in subtle ways. The other thing that drives me nuts is the, quote, developing world. It's so insulting. And we use it as a code back and forth because we all, quote, know what it is, but it's not a good thing. And I've tried all kinds of different alternatives, and I'd be very open to any of yours. Okay, what do we do? These are the 5 things I think we do. We translate. We learn from everywhere. We're sort of learning sponges. We are very careful not to use either or, yes, no, black and white thinking. We trust our design processes. And yeah, sometimes we have to tweak them a little, or sometimes we get a result that we kind of go, why did that happen? But we trust that we have a design process that works. And last of all, we definitely have fun. Absolutely. One of the, maybe the most important. Okay, now this is who we are. We are people with courage, with curiosity, integrity, flexibility, empathy. Now there are lots and lots of other ones, but these are the ones that I chose as exemplars of what makes us different, what makes us good at what we do. Okay, so first of all, we translate. You remember how I was talking about the interstices and going back and forth? That's the process of translating. And so UX translates into user-centered design or user experience or whatever. So that's where we explain something to someone else using that translation lens. Or we have user needs are translated into designs, or HCI people look between users and designers. You get the idea. We're translating. So let me give you an example. This is a study that we did in Samara, Russia. Samara is a second-tier city that's down on the Volga River that is just north of Kazakhstan, if that helps. Didn't really help me, but it helps some. And this is about a product called FlexGo. FlexGo was basically, you think of it as a pay-as-you-go computer, like a pay-as-you-go phone, right? Except in the end, when you'd paid enough, you'd actually own that computer. And Microsoft had also arranged for there to be special financing for people who wanted to buy a FlexGo, because computers are expensive. That's one reason why people didn't have computers, right? So, in order to use this system, you had to set up Windows. We all have done that, right? Set up Windows. You had to activate your Russia Online account. So you had to also activate the payment account. So there's 3 systems. But they had done tons and tons of usability evaluations on each of those things. So they really thought this was kind of a quick validation. An out-of-box experience, an UBI, I do love that word, an UBI, is what we were doing. And basically with an UBI, what you do is, take it out of the box and see what the experience is, right? So that's what we were doing. And this is my colleague and translator, Dasha, who now lives in the Ukraine. And we were at the store. There's only one store chain that actually had these. And someone who speaks Russian can translate that, but I can't. And so there you go. You can check on your status. You can check, keep everything up to date. But it also means that if you haven't paid enough to get the last 3 pages of that report finished, you're not going to get them unless you put in another token. So it can be pretty cruel. Okay, so what happened? It was not an easy thing. First of all, people couldn't get the loan. In fact, the manager of the store couldn't get the loan. So clearly all of that apparatus was broken. And as we worked to try to figure out how to solve all these problems, one of the guys who was going to be our first guy and didn't get the loan said he really, really wanted this computer, and he made kind of a fuss about it. So we said, great, here are the specs. Show us what you would do to get that computer. Well, what do you think he did? I can wait longer than you can.
Went to a different store.
They weren't in a different store, but that was a good answer. But what they did was, in a sense, a different store. He went to an assembler who would take all of the bits that he had specified, put them together into a computer, voila. It didn't have all that extra stuff, that Microsoft stuff. But so we said, fine, let's see what you do. So we go to the assembler to get the machine, and he's going, I really don't know why you're here. I mean, this is like so stupid. Why are you here? I said, well, you know, we're sort of curious. And so he took it home. He took it out of the box. He put it on the table. He plugged it in, turned it on, bing, there's Windows. Now, it's a pirated version of Windows, but he doesn't care. I mean, part of the reason for FlexGo was to try to curb piracy. Now, I think that that should have been thought about maybe about 30 years ago, not recently. So, finally on Saturday we decided we're going to just liberate a machine. And we took the machine to one of the families and said, okay, let's do this out-of-box experience. So he took the box, he took it out, he got all the wires connected, and that was the last thing that worked, literally. He turned on the computer, and first he got the end user licensing agreement, or EULA, which kind of looks, when you read the whole thing, like you're giving away your firstborn. It's scary if you don't know. Well, one of his friends, a technical friend, had come along and said, oh, just say yes. So he did. And, I mean, that obviously is unknown when you don't have the windows that you have to activate that we all know about, but guess what is not knowledge that we have in many other parts of the world. So then he started with something that required an English keyboard. This is the keyboard he had. So then he started trying to set up all these accounts, and he was getting more and more stressed. And finally, the other folks in the room who were also technical, we had seven technical people in the room. We had his friend, we had 2 software engineers who had worked on this product, a UX designer, me, the facilitator, and the translator. We were all very tech savvy. That's why we were picked to do this. Well, I'm afraid that about 4 hours later, we finally decided it wasn't going to work. And I, being the consultant, who is of course dispensable, I mean, consultants come with large targets on their back. So if anybody needs to be shot, that's my role, okay? So I wrote a fairly strongly worded email to the senior executive vice president who reported to God, Bill Gates, at the time. And I said, you know, this isn't going to work. You've got to get this out of stores. You've got to fix it because it's going to have a really bad impact if anybody else actually tries to use it. And as you might imagine, the next morning my cell phone started ringing, and it was the senior executive vice president who reported to God saying, essentially. So I sort of calmly said, well, let me just kind of tell you what happened. And I walked through each one of the steps, the things that we'd seen. And by the end, he was going, oh my Lord, oh no, we gotta pull it. That's what I wanted him to say. And so they did. And FlexGo never really made it in the market. It didn't go back to Russia for a long time. So that required a lot of courage on my part, because I don't like to even talk with senior executive vice presidents who report to God very often. And I certainly don't like to be yelled at by them. And, but that translating between the users and the folks at Microsoft who needed to know, that was my job with the target in the back. So, courage and translation. What's next? We learn from the world, from everywhere in the world. And I know a number of you in this room have traveled all over and have learned so much about the world. And it's so great. My experience was a global study of education that we did for Microsoft again, using lead user methods, lead user research methods, which were originally described by a guy named Eric Van Hippel, who was, I think, at MIT at the time. Yeah. And we were trying to use this because the lead user research method is looking for people who are before early adopters. They're people who are saying, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be something else we can do. So we called it GLUE, the Global Lead User Exploration. You have to have an acronym, you know. And this was curiosity totally embodied. So we went out to many places. Here's an example of a school in the village Karakura outside of Mysore. This is those of us who were at the school, the grown-ups. And these are folks that we talked to at length because one of the people, Matt Cam, he's the guy in the white shirt next to me on this side. This was research that he was doing actually for his dissertation, where he was looking at mobile and immersive learning for literacy in emerging economies, or MILI. And what he had done, he'd put together a variety of games, and those kids were in this study. And the games mirrored the games that kids played in the schoolyard. And so they kind of came with a cultural, they didn't feel weird anyway. And so they also had Razor phones, which that dates it, of course. But they were just unbelievable. And I went for a little walkabout with a bunch of the kids, mostly girls, and they wanted to show me this, and they wanted to show me that. And on the way back, there was a cow, and one of them said, "What is that?" I said, "What is it?" He said, "A cow." "What color is the cow?" "The cow is brown." And so from then on, every cow we saw was a different color.
So you need to say that the games were teaching them English.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, David. He's my minder. Those games, the whole idea was to help the kids learn English. It's very hard to learn English in a village where nobody speaks English. And it's seen as a power language, rightly or wrongly. And so these games were, yes, to teach them the alphabet, to teach them sounds, and using phones was a perfect vehicle for that. We also went to the UK. This is a chap on the he has a target right next to him on the playground, and some girls also in the UK and some kids in South Africa. In fact, we went to all of these countries, 9 different countries, and had just amazing experiences. And the key thing there was curiosity. So number 2, we learned from the world because we're curious. What's 3? No, we're not to 3 yet. This is still 2. So these are some guidelines to help people who are going into the field, who might not have had an opportunity to do the kind of research that a number of you in this room have done. And I'd be very interested if you have either you don't agree with something or you have additional things, I really would love it if you guys would pipe up at the end. But basically, you want to learn everything. So I have a friend who is, I think Nick said this, who is using kente cloth from Ghana as inspiration for designs. I think that was Nick. Wasn't that Nick? Nick Bidwell in South Africa. So everything has the opportunity to learn. Okay, we learn from the world, curiosity. We translate, courage. Okay, now what about black and white thinking? Well, you know what black and white thinking is. It's yes and no, it's closed-ended questions, but the problem is that behavior is a lot more complicated than that, right? So, and it can be very difficult if you ask somebody a question and they aren't really sure what that means, so they just choose one, yes or no. So one of the things that we have to remember is how we comport ourselves to not have black and white thinking. If you're a consultant or a leader of a research project, we need to think how we model to our team the kinds of more squishy gray that it really turns out to be usually. So let me show you some examples. So we did a study in South Africa with Gary Marsden, helped us identify, and he kind of blessed us. And this research was on how people use mobile phones. And this is again Microsoft. I did work for people besides Microsoft, but in fact, that's the next one. But we thought that people, South Africa, like many parts of the world, has a very classic migration story. People in the villages send someone, a young person typically, to the city to earn money that then they send back. Classic. Similar in China, and it's all very similar. With, of course, nuances, because this isn't black and white thinking, right? So we thought that people out in the bush didn't actually have bank accounts, which we were wrong about. And we also thought that people in the townships would put the money in an envelope and give it to a bus driver who would take it to the end place where it was going. That was also wrong. But this isn't really about that study. It's about what happened during that study. We spent time with each of our participants on informed consent. We tried to manage the conversations with the help of a number of people from the township, because, I mean, it's pretty obvious I'm not from there. But so one of the things was to demonstrate to my team, especially to one of the members of my team, that we're not there to judge people. So unfortunately, team members sometimes jump to conclusions, like they would be simplistic. That person is unsophisticated. What does that mean? And my role was, my role was to try to show how that thinking wasn't useful, to challenge that kind of thinking. And also kind of to set parameters around the lines of inquiry and when to ask things, when to listen for things, when not to. So for instance, people were often saving for the initiation ceremony for a brother, and they could only tell us a little bit about it, but that was a really important thing to understand why they were sending money back and what the urgency was to get it and how they saved it and et cetera. So people reacted really differently to different parts of the township. And here, for instance, it was very, very rainy and very muddy. And so I had to kind of correct the team occasionally, one particular person, because actually one of them was kind of expressing disgust, which that's really bad. And she even laughed at someone. Now, my role was to stop that, and I did. She was not happy, but making sure that people are aware that we're here at the invitation of people. We're here with knowing that we are disrupting the environment and we need to control for that as much as we can. And so, luckily, when we went from the city back to the countryside to see what happened with the money, we had a wonderful person who came with us who was a lot more sophisticated and really didn't use black and white thinking. So, fourth, sorry. Oh, yeah, well, just stick with me. So, we trust our process. This is a story of HP, Hewlett-Packard's first digital camera in 1996. This is before some of you were born, I know. But it was back in the day. Is there anybody here who remembers when there weren't digital cameras? Okay, a few of you. Oh, that's great. So you know the model, point, shoot, right? And if you want to know how many pictures you've taken, you look at the number and you take a shot, and it either goes up, in which case that means that's how many pictures you've taken, or it goes down, which means you have that many pictures left, right? Easy, easy peasy. But you know, we all know with digital cameras, it's not just that, right? There's all kinds of stuff you can do. These people didn't have a clue, nor would we have expected them to. So we, David and I, spent a month. We did, I'll show you what it turned out to be, 80 turns of the design. That bottom thing went on the panel. That's how much space we had to tell them, show them. No words except auto. So we had to go out and come up, co-design what would work to tell people what was going on with the camera. We gave them just the basic, what they would see on the box. And we used Post-it notes, which, by the way, are a fabulous, fabulous tool for design. And we went, and David and I would go out, we'd come back, we'd compare, we'd redesign, we'd go back out. So it was really, really intense, but it was really exciting, too. So basically, this is all of the different LEDs lit. So over here, you have a film can with 1, 2, or 3 stars, meaning quality, which means size, right? We know that. They didn't. And then if you take a picture, the little arrow goes up and over to a stack of pictures. And then the number below goes down. If you erase a picture, it goes the other way. And if you happen to erase a very large picture, then that number goes from this to that. So we did this. It was really exciting. And it was the kind of thing that makes you really feel like you've actually had an impact in the short term. Because this design actually won a number of design awards. Sadly, they didn't actually release the camera until a year later, at which point it didn't really succeed because it didn't have enough memory. It's just proving that we are not the only ones who determine whether a product fails or not, even though, I don't know about you, but I always take it on myself, right? Okay, so, and we have fun. Basically, I'm a believer that you can have fun doing almost anything. Well, okay, maybe not cleaning the bathroom, but you can have fun doing all kinds of things as a team. And especially when things are unexpected or they're sensory, so you have something, for instance, to taste. This is an example with a real big container of jelly beans. And we had people do user segments based on these jelly beans. Of course, no user research, but. And so they came up with these different types of users, people who were, sensation seekers or that were exotic, who were really interested in other parts of the world, etc. Well, then they showed what the coconut isn't showing up very well, what the different beans were, and it was really interesting. But when I gave this example at Africa a year and a half ago, you see mango under exotic. Mango's not exotic in Kenya, not at all. So if they were doing exotics, they might put in, say, an apple. But that shows yet again how much, how culturally bound we can be and not even realize it. Having someone on your team who's really different from you, it can be a really wonderful thing. Because these folks might have found the segmentation. They might have found out about mango earlier, without having to have me go to Africa, which I didn't mind. Don't get me wrong. I also believe in having fun when I'm teaching people. So when I was teaching how to do observations, we used games. This is called Uno Stacco, basically Jenga, except it's made out of plastic that rattles really loud when it falls over. And we had lots of opportunities. This is that walkabout I was telling you about, where we had this opportunity to just really enjoy being in the presence of folks and learning a lot while we're doing that. And it's also fun for us, and our teams, and our bosses, and is Alan still here? Even for Alan, this is important, right, Alan? Yes, he's shaking his head. When we have fun, we quite literally, our brains light up. And you see activity in parts of the brain that you don't normally see looking like this. And so we are physiologically predisposed to wanting to have fun, right? Remember what we did when we were kids? Anybody jump in a puddle just to, or maybe, well, you wouldn't be throwing snowballs too often, but, so all of those things. Now, so, we're translators, we learn from the world, we don't use black and white thinking, we trust the process, we have fun. Let's now go up a level. So, the thing that is the real difference, I believe, is our hearts. They unfold, they embrace, and they help us build the kind of trust that goes both ways so that we can really truly have a huge impact on the design. Okay, so I tried to leave lots and lots of time here for questions, hoping that somebody has one. So we've talked about what we do, talked about who we are, given you some stories. But now, David, I need that bag, please. Okay. Thank you. My bearer, he's really good. Okay, so now I would like, this is, I'm going to do something that it's probably, it's American, right? So, hold on. Okay. Now, just close your eyes for a minute or two. Sorry. It would be better to be able to, duck behind the dais or something. Okay. Now, unfortunately, I did not finish one part of this. Whoops. This isn't a good idea to do over 2 hats. Just so you know, I have to wear this hat because I had a concussion and I'm real sensitive to light. So that's why I'm, sorry, doing it like this. Okay. Now this is a call and response. So when I say, if the user can't use it, you say, then it doesn't work at all. Okay, let's try that. If the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, excellent, okay. Oh, sorry. And all of the things that you have to say will be in red. Okay. Gotta get into a new mode here. Okay. Here we go, sorry. Now you have to bear with me and you have to get into it, okay? It's a requirement, you have to get into it. I have to see at least 7 smiles. Right now we're doing okay, but we're skirting on the edge. Okay, here we go. From the USA, where I live today, comes another visit from the other Dr. Dray. Last time I rapped was about ethnography, but this time is different, as you shall soon see. To tell you again about my favorite lessons, things I have learned about our profession, things learned from life but not concessions. This rap's a wrap-up of this expression. If the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, you and me, we translate. That's lesson number 1. Between many different people, and it's often lots of fun, but it also takes quite a lot of skill, at least if we're going to translate well. It takes quite a lot of intelligence, but not just the head kind, but both head and gut. So we need to be sure to take care and help each other because we all need support. It's really not a bother. Some of these rhymes may seem a tad cheesy, but please forgive me, this rapping ain't easy. If the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, we must learn from the world. That's lesson number 2, which means you can learn from me and I can learn from you. And 2 from places far away, though sometimes that is harder. But if we learn from everything, it's bound to make us smarter. If the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, Number 3 is about our thinking. Black and white will just not do, for the world is more complex and more nuanced, and so you must find ways to make things clearer. Certainly that is true. But oversimplifying, that we must not do. To take complexity and tame it and to make it understood is a skill. It's not the same as simply saying something's good. For though pundits may not see it when they oversimplify, our profession is diminished in their audience's eyes. We can make it that much harder to make traction where they've been. So I cannot say it stronger. This kind of thinking is a sin. If the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, and now for the next. In the process we must trust, for with people at the center and our teams on board, we must stay faithful to the process, for we know that when we're through, our products will be better because that's what we do. If the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, our final lesson's easy, for when all is said and done, we work and learn much better when we are having fun. This goes as much for us as it does for our teams and our students and all others, even bosses and deans. In fact, this wraps an expression of this thought, for though some think a woman of my years should not be taught a rap into an audience of younger folks, it's true. This rap's been a lot of fun for me, I hope for you. Yes, if the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, now to master these 5 lessons so that they're your very own takes a person who is clear about the values that we own. Our profession makes a difference because of who we are right now, showing courage, curiosity, integrity, and how. We can flex, we're empathetic, and our work inspires us to higher heights and deeper thoughts and a perspective we can trust. But the things that are most crucial are our hearts, so deep and full. Here at Swansea, it's clear you know this. So please demonstrate for all. If the user can't use it, if the user can't use it, now, oops, sorry. I hope you will take these lessons all to heart, to put them into practice so that you can do your part. So I'll leave with one last thought I hope will help you to recall. If the user can't use it, 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 there you have it. Anybody have any questions? Of Dr. Dray, the rapper, or Dr. Dray, the non-rapper?
Is that my cue to come?
Oh, I think it's your cue, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Last week I was with a group of students in Oulu in Finland. Quite a lot of them from lots of places, but anybody who knows people from Finland knows that Finland has interesting interpretations there. I had one group who were designing something specific for a library, and they were about to demo it all and to prototype it all with purely screen-based things. They were going to have the thing that would appear on your mobile phone. They were going to have the thing that appeared in the library. And I was sort of trying to gently push them, at least draw a picture of the library where the things would be, or maybe make a model. And as I'm speaking, I realise I'm going to rap rhythms, so I'm not careful.
Yeah, hey, I'll rap with
And
you.
they took my little push, and they went, not overboard, just amazingly. They produced this model. I know Julie, where's Julia? Yeah, there you are. Has been retweeting some of the images that came out. And there was other fantastic things as well. But this library, they made this model about this big cardboard. They made all the sections. They made a video with little peg people moving around inside it. But crucially also, they were having fun. But when they had fun, they also made the little stands with the little peg people go up to that would have like an iPad style display on. They had like a bigger display in the library. They showed and they saw where all the things that they were going to do as screen prototypes would have lived in the world. And so by having fun, they learnt a lot. And I think that's the lesson I think comes out of all your work over so many years. So
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's it. Thank you again, Sue. I'll give you another
Thank you.
So we'll have a few like more formal questions, and then, but just if you want to grab food, there's gazillions of food up there, and if you want to take some away for later, there's plenty for that as well.
To bosses and deans, even.
So eat, talk. So we'll have a few sort of like more formally ones, and then. But if you need to go, just go and take food on the way. If you want to grab more food and come and talk. So.
Yes.
So I'll start off more formally. Does anybody want to do the sort of hands up view type question? This is when I'm supposed to pre-prepared things, isn't it? I haven't, so I'm hoping somebody will put a hand up or say something useful. You always look to have interesting, useful things to say.
Sure, thank you very much. So I'm a bit of a novice to HCI, so I'm going to ask the Dole question.
There's no such thing?
You say we trust in process. Could you highlight what that is in terms of process rather than behaviour and values? I think I got a lot of that from the talk.
The process is our process. And that process is a process of human-centered design, whatever you call it. It can be called co-design. It can be called participatory design. But the point is that it's not us doing the design on our own, like pre-diorama. It's us understanding what's going on for people and then designing, hopefully with them, or alongside them, or when we go home, but remembering them. And so those things, the behavior and all that kind of stuff that you mentioned, that's what we learn when we're doing human-centered design so that we can put that person at the core. So we're designing for people rather than designing for the sake of design.
I wanted to share an experience. I worked in a big law firm, and we used user experience design really to design our whole intranet site.
Fabulous.
And it did work really, really well. The intranet site stood the test of time. 10 years later,
Wow.
it was still a very usable site.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Congratulations.
So it's really nice.
Really?
And I do agree, I was a project coordinator at the time, and the team did have a lot of fun as well along the way, so, because we were well supported.
Absolutely.
And our users, ultimately, they will love the end result
Yeah.
if you involve them well enough.
Yeah,
do that.
exactly. In this meeting I'm doing next week, which is, Ellen mentioned, it's called SIGCHI Across Borders, SIGCHI being the Special Interest Group in Computer-Human Interaction, which is part of the ACM. And as I mentioned, the global north has kind of dominated it. There's been very little input from folks in the global south, so to speak, or resource-constrained economies or lean economies, whatever. And so we've had a meeting in Alexandria, Egypt, a meeting in Guatemala, and we're having the final meeting here in Swansea. It's the Swansea meeting, which is really exciting for me. And we're bringing people from all over the world to both participate as individuals as well as to help facilitate. And we have 21 different countries, which blows me away. And I think there are only 2 countries that are duplicated. One is the United States, there are 2 of us, and the other is Namibia. Oh no, she's not coming. Only the United States. But what we're going to do, we're going to work really hard to talk about how we can, what kinds of things people are having problems with in their work around the world, and we're going to put it all together, and we're going to be working hard. But as my friend Thomas knows, because he saw the box up in my office, we have a lot of toys. We have toys from the US, we're going to have some toys from Guatemala, we're going to have some toys from here. And it's amazing what having, it sounds stupid, but having a yo-yo that you can play with, or plasticine, that you can model, or pipe cleaners. Pipe cleaners are great, and you get them in like foil gold and silver. I mean, they're really cool. So you have lots of things, and most of them are constructing things, because a lot of people think better when their hands are busy. I think better when I'm beading. You might be able to tell I like beads. It helps take the part of my brain, which is kind of trying to race ahead and figure out what to say to the person before they've even said it. It just sort of takes that part and gets it busy, so I can just be present in the moment. So having fun is a great pretense. And I'm glad to hear that you've had that experience too. It's wonderful.
I was interested in similarities perhaps between human-computer interaction, whatever that means, I don't really know, UX, and perhaps natural world-centered design, where there's similarities that engineers, as like NASA, look to the natural world for metaphors and also models, and whether or not any of that stuff goes on in your field.
Well, engineers are an important part of user experience, in my opinion. They're the people who make stuff work. If they're not involved, I mean, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. Initially in my first job, I worked only with engineers and a couple of other people like us. This was before HCI, by the way. And yeah, it's wonderful. And you have to think about ways that are going to be fun for the engineers as well as for the HCI people. So for instance, I did a project here with HP in Bristol looking at tape drives. Dates me, doesn't it? I can only talk about old things because I'm under NDA, and I'd have to shoot you all, and I really don't want to do that. So, even though I'm an American, and Americans have guns, right? I apologize for my country. And anyway, so I was taking engineers into the field. Wow. Now that was an eye-opener for them. I mean, they had imagined that tape drives would be used in clean rooms that were, air conditioned and no dust and everything. So when the third visit turned out to be to a sewage treatment plant, and the tape drive was on the floor under the desk, they're caustic things and smells and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's clearly not a clean room. He also complained bitterly that the tape drive had caught his dog on fire because the dog loved the tape drive. It was the warmest place to lie. So he would lie right on it, and one day he started smoking. So, but for that one, it wasn't just taking them into the field. It was doing some analysis with them. And I had them do something that's very un-engineering and very un-British, and that was to make collages out of magazines, which I'd been keeping up for a long, long time. And they had to create a collage of the place that they'd visited and then explain it to everybody. And of course, they came in and they whinged. They said, we don't do that kind of stuff. We're British engineers. We don't do that kind of. I said, well, unfortunately, you have an American who's telling you have to do it, and they actually did. And in the end, they were so powerful that they actually stayed up in the hallway for several years after that. They got framed, and I was like, crazy. So, yes, engineers are great people. So.